Hello, everyone. I'm Janet Tarantino, author of Dying to See, Revelations about God, Jesus, Our Pathways, and the Nature of the Soul. And I'd like to welcome you today to my YouTube channel called Exploring Everything Spiritual. Please click the like button below and feel free to share any of my videos on my YouTube channel. And don't forget to subscribe below to see future amazing videos of everything spiritual. Today we have Jennifer Dean. Let me tell you a little bit about her. Jennifer experienced an NDE, a near-death experience, during her chemotherapy treatments that were used to treat the leukemia she was diagnosed with at the age of 13. Unfortunately, she had a severe adverse reaction to her treatments, which catapulted her into a vegetative state. She was aware of everything around her, yet locked into an unresponsive body. Can you imagine that? Jen was in and out of consciousness during this dire time. Upon drifting out of consciousness into another state of being, she was taken into what she describes as a loving and peaceful void. Shortly after awakening from this alternative state of being, she made a full recovery, not only from her vegetative state, but from cancer as well. Doctors were absolutely stunned. Now I'd like to welcome Jennifer to my program today. Welcome, Jennifer. How are you today?
Hi, good. How are you?
Great.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And you've had a pretty incredible journey. Would you like to share what happened to you with the audience?
Sure. So yeah, at 13 years old, I was diagnosed with acute lymphocytic leukemia, and I started to undergo like heavy duty treatments. This was in 1995. So a lot of it was experimental, but it was like, they would like blasted me with chemo, and I was getting intrathecal methotrexate, which is like chemotherapy in my spinal fluid, because leukemia is cancer of the blood. So it can get through the blood-brain barrier to get to the brain. So they put the chemo into the spinal fluid to kill off any cancer cells that may get to the brain. Well, after, I'd say weeks and weeks, if not months, of getting these treatments, I was actually getting ready to do my very first radiation treatment. And I was being treated at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And so they had to wheel me over to the hospital of the University of Pennsylvania Radiology Center to undergo my first round of radiation to my brain, because that's another part of the treatment protocol, is radiation to the brain. So as I'm sitting there with my mom, all of a sudden, like, I couldn't hold my head up, and then my arm went out, and then my leg, like my whole left side, went out. And I just turned to my mom and I said, something's wrong. I don't feel good. And she said she saw my mouth drooping, and she rushed to get a nurse because she thought I was having a stroke. So my mom was at home healthy for years. So they rushed me back over to my hospital room, where my oncologist came up, my pediatric oncologist, to go ahead and just see what was going on. And I mean, like, when he walked in, he looked stunned or scared. And like, I just, like, I could still speak at that point. I was slurring my speech, just like if I had a stroke. And I asked, am I going to die? Because like, seeing your doctor look scared is never a good sign. So he looked at me and he said, I don't know. And I just looked away into thin air and was like, this is it. Like, this, my time is up. I guess this is it. And I just kind of accepted whatever came next. I didn't question it. I just was like, whatever's going to happen. And shortly after that, I started to actually get my left side back. I started to kind of come back, and my speech was still a little slurred, but I was okay. And I would say that was within 24 hours. And the doctors actually came up and said, thank God I didn't get that round of radiation, which I was like the next patient to go in. Had I gotten that round of radiation, the first round, it would have burned the chemotherapy in my brain, and I never would have come out of that. So right then and there, I was like, something saved me. Like, I just knew something saved me, and it was an epiphany. And I was like, I mean, I was the next patient to go. Like, the timing of that, reaction was just too good. And so then I was okay enough to eat, because a lot of times they won't let, a patient eat if you don't have a gag reflex, you can choke. So I was okay. And I was eating my lunch, watching Stand By Me with my father. And all of a sudden I went to swallow a carrot and I almost choked, and I coughed it up, and my dad looked at me quick, and my eyes filled with tears. I thought I said, it's happening again. My father says, no, that's not what I said. That I just was like, it was like mumbling, shaky mumbling. And then I was out. So at that point, I fell unconscious. And I remember being in a peaceful void. I don't remember seeing a light or hearing anything. It was just peaceful, like an extremely deep sleep is what it felt like. But I felt peaceful. It wasn't scary. You would think it'd be scary. It wasn't. It was like I was wrapped in darkness, like swaddled in darkness. So then I was coming in and out of consciousness. And when I would come back, I was trapped in my body. So I had slipped into a vegetative state at this point because the chemo wasn't done attacking my brain. So as I would wake up, I couldn't speak, I couldn't use my body, but I was fully aware. So here I am, fully aware, clear thinking, and I can't communicate or use my body or anything. So it was extremely scary. Especially, I was 14 at this point, and for a 14-year-old, I mean, for anybody, it'd be scary. But I remember the doctors wanted to do an MRI on me, and they put me in the MRI machine, and they put headphones on because it's a loud banging noise. So when they put the headphones on, it was all static coming through, and they didn't know it, and I couldn't tell them. So I couldn't take them off my head. I just was sitting there listening to static, and it was driving me crazy. So my dad was in the room when I was having this MRI done, and I started, like, I told my feet to move. I needed to get somebody to get these headphones off. And I did. I started to wiggle my feet, and my dad saw that, and he said he looked at me. He looked over at me, he saw tears streaming down my face, and he got up to pull me out of the MRI machine. And all the medical staff rushed in, and they got me out, and they sat me up. They gave me like a dry erase board and a marker to try to communicate what I needed to say. And as I tried to hold the marker, I couldn't, because it was, at this point, it was a severe brain reaction, or severe brain damage, because it just attacked that part of my brain. And so I was like in decorticate posture. So I had, contracted up, my hands were, I couldn't hold the pen and write. I didn't have the strength. So I dropped the pen and I started crying. I was like, this is it. This is my life. This is my life now. I can't even communicate my most basic needs. I just was so, like, scared. I was scared. But then I would slip back out of consciousness. So then I'd slip unconscious again, because it was kind of in and out. And I was back in the peaceful void. I wasn't scared. I was at peace. And then the last time I came out of the peaceful void, I woke up to my entire family around my hospital bed. And, like, this is parents, cousins, aunts, uncles, my grandmothers. I can tell you my grandfathers, who had passed away already at that point, were definitely there in spirit. My siblings, everybody was there, because the doctors had told my parents and my family that, like, either she's going to be a vegetable for the rest of her life, or she's going to die, because there was only, I think at that time, only 8 other cases of this type of severe adverse reaction to the intrathecal chemotherapy, that the kids never came out of it or they died. So it was really a bad prognosis. But when I woke up from the peaceful void again, I knew I was going to be okay. Because I remember looking at everybody, scanning them and thinking, why do they look so scared? And I was like, it's okay, guys, I'm going to be okay. But like, this is me thinking this. This is like telepathically, I'm trying to explain that to them. I couldn't speak yet. And I kept looking up at my IV pole, like, what are they giving me? I'm so tired. Like, I had no clue how bad I looked. Or like, I was so unaware, I think, of my body. And I just remember thinking, like, I'm going to be okay. And then slowly I started to come around, and I started to be able to move my body again. My speech, I had to get back. You know, at first, like, my cousins and aunt made like index cards with words on them so I could communicate until I could get my speech back. But it was like, I always kind of knew what to do for myself after that. Never even like thought twice about my experience, because I still had probably a year left of treatments to go through. So this was just in the beginning, and this was like an 18-month protocol, which I kept having to stop because I have adverse reactions. I mean, I had more adverse reactions to the medications, but this one was the biggie. This one was the one that just like nearly took me out. So I went through the rest of the chemo. I had, like, honestly, like, nothing could be worse than where I was. So honestly, it probably made it a little easier. Like, well, at least I can talk and walk, and, you know, but then when I went to high school, I kind of buried the memories. Like, I was in high school, I didn't want anybody to know I had cancer, even if they did know. I never wanted to talk about it. I truly buried the memory of being in a vegetative state. And that's childhood trauma. And that was severe childhood trauma. So like, my arms have contractures, which I had to have surgery on my left arm, and my right arm, they don't straighten all the way from being in that state. And literally I would I try to make sense of that by, oh, I must have slept like this a lot. Like, I wouldn't even go near that memory. So I carried on, went to high school, you know, made a full recovery from cancer and everything, went to high school, had a blast. I was just happy to be alive. Like, I was that person, I just wanted to have fun. Like, I knew deep down, like, I had just dodged a couple bullets and I'm going to have fun. So in my early 20s, I had always wanted to be a crime scene investigator. And so, but to be a crime scene investigator, you have to go through the steps of like police academy and whatnot. And I have physical limitations from the chemotherapy treatments. So I couldn't do that. So I always thought, like, I wonder how else can I work, you know, with that type of work. And then I got a job at the local hospital in like inpatient transport. And then within a year and a half, a job popped up for a pathology assistant position. And I ended up getting that job. And part of that job was to assist the medical examiner in the morgue with autopsies. This was the county medical examiner. So I started to assist in autopsies. I was an autopsy assistant. And I mean, I always knew the souls were in a better place. I still, at this point, had not remembered being in a vegetative state. Like, I still buried that memory, but like, death always fascinated me, you know, and, you know, working in the morgue, when I stepped into that role, you know, the physical side of it, I thought was going to be hard. And it was very hard at times, but spiritually, it was like going into that role and not knowing maybe how spiritually open I am, because I definitely had the after effects. I was not really ready to like have what happened happen, because there was one case in particular that it was an older man. He had end-stage lung cancer and he ended his life. because he was terminal and he couldn't take the pain anymore. Now, it was my job to like do the cutting and hand the doctor the organs. So you got the medical examiner standing next to me. I'm all gowned up, ready to go. I have sheriffs behind me waiting because they, they always do that. It's just part of legalities of the case. They do an investigation and whatnot. So they're there to take pictures of whatever the doctor needs them to, or take fingerprints, but they're all there. And I mean, this case, because I had cancer, so I empathize so heavily with this soul. I put my hand out and I put it on this man's arm, and it was like everybody disappeared, and it was just me and this soul. And I just felt his pain, and I was showering him with love, but then I saw what he did. So like the energy of that was still with him. And I just stopped what I was doing, eyes filled with tears. And I had a sheriff come over and put his arm around me and whisper in my ear that you really cannot, you have to detach with these cases or you're going to lose your mind. So I was like, all right, okay. Cause that case, like it almost brought me to tears. So I understood, so I tried to pull back, but there was always, not always, but there were certain cases where that soul was absolutely still there. You could feel them there. And I feel like some of these cases that have stuck with me over the years were meant to, like to learn their lesson so they didn't die in vain. They it's like that man that, ended his life. It's like he stays with me to remind me to live my life to the fullest. So I do. And then, so I did that job for about 5 years. So there were many cases that it could be difficult, if I didn't put up that boundary, I would just be a mess because it's just so much trauma, like traumatic deaths. A lot of times the soul could be confused. So maybe don't cross right over, maybe they could be there just still trying to figure out what happened and then do their own journey in their own time. But I was just, judgment free, showed love. And anytime I felt like there was a case or a person or soul that was sticking with me, I knew it was for a reason. So after working in the morgue for like 5 years, I ended up feeling like I needed to work with, living patients. So I went into nursing, and that is, I became a nurse and things were great. One of my first patients, like I knew I was where I was meant to be because my first pediatric patient, I'm a pediatric home health nurse. I looked at her and she looked exactly like I did when I was in that vegetative state. And still, the memory didn't fully come back. There was just something about her. And I'm like, I know I'm meant to be here. I know I'm meant to like help this girl. And I just always knew how to like communicate with her. At this point, I didn't know anything really about intuition or near-death experiences, after effects, none of that. But like, even you don't have to recognize it or understand it for it to be there. So I was always really good with that. I took a lot of neuro cases or pediatric, like baby cases where like the patient couldn't communicate because like that's how I use my intuitive abilities to know what they needed, especially with babies and whatnot. You have to be intuitive to do that job. I mean, like they can't tell you their needs. It's like you step in almost as their mother while their mother's not there and you're caring for them. So I always use my intuition like that, but didn't really know what I was doing with it. I had my near-death experience at such a young age that these things were normal to me. I didn't label them or question them. I just never questioned myself, which was pretty good, I guess, because it led me all the way through. Like there, in 2014, I had I have a loved one that passed on, and that death just like took me down. I fell in such a depression. I couldn't understand like why God would take this person and not take me. Like a lot of survivor's guilt was coming up, and I was like mad at God. Like I just didn't understand. Like I fell into such a dark depression that all of a sudden the memories started coming back about what I had been through. And then shortly after the memories started to resurface, I had a visitation from my passed on loved one. I would say probably an out of body experience, because I was sleeping on the couch and I woke up in the kitchen with her standing in front of me. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, she is dead. Like, how is she in front of me? So I was thinking like, what is happening? And she gave me a hug and told me, you know, thank you for everything you've done. And I woke up on the couch and I felt this like peaceful feeling come all through me. I mean, like poured through me. And I just cried and cried because I knew I had just been hugged by an angel. Like my passed on loved one's soul, like just hugged me. And after that happened, my intuition like exploded. But I believe looking back, I was in like a dark night of the soul, and I was really deep in. So it was like spirit was coming in to pull me out. And then I started to see signs and synchronicities, and I didn't fully know what these words were or what they meant. But that's around that time is when I started to research near-death experiences. I started to find out all this spiritual information. It was like I had gotten a download when I got that hug. And I ended up 2 months later getting pregnant with my son. Now, I'm a pediatric cancer survivor, so I've always been told that I'm probably infertile. Me and my husband at the time have been trying for years, like 5 or 6 years, to try and get pregnant. Nothing happened. And after I was hugged by this soul, by my friend's soul, I knew exactly what to do. I knew what herbs to take. I detoxed my body. I knew what herbs to take, the exercises to do, meditations to do, visualizations to do. And sure enough, I got pregnant, like without any medical intervention, which that was the route I was going to try to take, because I felt like my body's been through so much Western medicine. Maybe we should try it holistic. Plus, you know, IVF and stuff is not cheap. So we really couldn't take that route. So I was like, all right, I'm going to, I'll try to start to, but after I got that hug, I knew what to do. And when I got pregnant, I mean, I couldn't even believe it. Like I had to take the ultrasound picture and put it on the refrigerator, because I had to keep like myself, like, this is really happening. Like I have always wanted a baby, and I've always cried about, probably being infertile and why can't God just give me a baby? I mean, I've cried to my parents, I've cried around my husband at the time. Like it was always just, I mean, I was told I may be infertile before I even became a woman, and all I ever wanted was a baby. So it was like, and I knew God would be the one to give me that baby. Like that's not something you can necessarily buy. So I just always prayed for this kid, and then I was pregnant. And, something interesting happened probably within the few months before I found out I was pregnant. I had been going to doctors, and I have like rheumatoid arthritis as a side effect of the chemotherapy. So I was told to take methotrexate, which is kind of crazy because that's what I had a reaction to, but that's what they're using. And you can't take that. You have to stop taking that 6 months prior to even trying to get pregnant, because it's chemotherapy. It will kill quickly growing cells. So you'll have a miscarriage, or you'll have a very deformed baby. Like, so you cannot take that. It's got to be completely out of your system. And I stopped taking it for a while because I felt like it was time to try again. Like I was just had that intuitive feeling like the time was coming to try again. And 2 different doctors told me to take the methotrexate during like probably 3 months before I found out I was pregnant. So every time they said it, it just didn't feel right. It didn't sit right with me. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to take that, and at this time, my intuition was going crazy. I had an ultrasound and I looked up on the screen at one point. There was a 20-week fetus on the screen. Now I look over at the tech and I'm like, okay, she doesn't see this. I'm not going to say anything because I'll look like a lunatic. I'm just going to take that in. What am I seeing? What's coming to me? I had a family member go to a psychic a year before I got pregnant and tell us that we were going to have a baby boy. So this was a year before. Then I started seeing some. At that time, I was like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's really going to happen. We've been trying. It's not happening. But when I started to see the signs, I was like, oh, man, this kid is coming. Right. So as soon as I detoxed my body and I got, fully clear, and it was just my body fell into alignment with the vision and I got pregnant, I look back and I see why I was having these like intuitive spikes, because had I listened to those doctors and taken that methotrexate, I would not have my son. And I was in such a dark depression. I don't think I could have handled losing a baby. So I thank God every day I listen to myself. I thank God every day that my parents told me to listen to myself, because they have seen what I've been through and they know I know myself best. And they just said, just listen to yourself. If it's not here now, it will be here. So I'm so grateful I had that support, because without that, I wouldn't have my son, or I would have had to have made a decision that I was not ready to make at that time. And so when I got pregnant and all this, it was just like a dream come true, like feeling life grow inside of me. It was the most amazing feeling. It's like I waited lifetimes to feel this. Like, that's honestly how it feels. Like, I've gone through lifetimes and I've tried to become a mother, but I've never actually gotten there. And like, this is the lifetime that I'm actually getting to my version on heaven on earth. Because to me, being a mother is heaven on earth. It's the one thing I wasn't sure if I would live to see. And the one thing I was told I may never get to. So I took it all in. And even during childbirth, as I was giving birth to my son, I went back to the peaceful void. And what happened was, I was in labor and the nurse was like, all right, you ready to push? On the count of 3, push. And I was like, okay. So she goes 1, and then I was gone. I was back in the peaceful void. And when I came back to consciousness, I didn't black out or anything, but they say childbirth is like an out-of-body experience. And many women have experienced that. So, I came back of her, the nurse was like, good job. So she got through 2, 3 and push, but I was not there to hear any of it. So that was incredible. Even at that moment, I was like, that was so cool. And then like push. So I had my son, and it was the love I felt. It was God's love. Like, if I could describe God's love, it would be like the love you have for your child, but so much bigger, like more than your body could house. But the closest things on earth that I can relate to is holding your child, having a child. That was God's love. That is God's love to me. And it's like, with one look into my son's eyes, I felt healed. Like, nothing else could have gotten me to that place of just healed my soul. I've been through so much, and to finally have this kid, like, I had a whole new respect for my body. I embrace every single moment with my son, because I mean, this is a kid that I wasn't sure I'd ever get to, but ever since my NDE, I knew I would get to him, but you know how doubt likes to come in and play games. So after trying for so long, I started to like lose the faith a little bit in, and then that's when my family member said she went to a psychic and said that they saw a baby. And so it kind of like, okay, that's intriguing. But then I saw the signs and I had him, and it was just the most amazing thing to me. And after that, I ended up getting more involved with like the spiritual side of things. I added Reiki to my nursing practice, and the Reiki has been amazing. Once I became a Reiki practitioner, it's like I really opened up, and I started, learning so much more about spirituality and my ancestors, and tapping into my roots. And it's been like an amazing ride. But 2.5 years ago, after I became a Reiki practitioner, I ended up having a miscarriage. So that was horrible. That was definitely something that it was like, so I feel like that baby came in to teach me what true loss felt like, because I mean, losing a baby, it was the hardest thing I've ever been through, and it still is. But when I'm in meditation, I see my baby, and she is like 5 years old on the other side with my grandmother until I cross over. And she's 5 years old. She passed as a fetus. I lost her like almost 8 weeks. And I say her because I know I heard her heartbeat. I felt her energy. I knew it was going to be a girl. But when I'm in meditation, I see her, and she's 5 years old on the other side. So I believe that she grew spiritually because she did teach me a huge lesson. And, we are on this earth to learn the good and the bad. It's not just the good, we learn the most from some rough stuff. So, I can't wait to one day when I cross over to finally hold my baby girl. But in the meantime, she shows that she's here, and I feel her, especially when I was going through the grieving process. I had so many signs from my grandmother. I had signs from the soul of my baby, just to remind me that I'm not alone in my grieving. And, I understand like why she was never meant to incarnate. She was meant to teach me what true loss felt like.
Sometimes that's souls come in at exit like that to teach lessons, to not maybe to the parent, maybe to a nurse, it could be any number of people. And what I picked up from your experiences is that these things probably did happen for a reason, because of the nursing field that you've gotten into, and that brought you a lot of empathy that could handle their illnesses. And then the thank you from your relative that had passed, that kind of gave you the download. That could have been Jesus himself, masquerading that way and sharing that love with you. Yeah.
Right. And I always thought it could be that my passed on loved one came through, but it was a higher energy being. But I had to see her one last time, not in her coffin. Mm-hmm. And that was why I saw her and was hugged by her, because I needed that for closure, for healing. But I was hugged by the light ultimately. Yes, I got a massive download of just like what to do, where to go, what to look up. It was the amount of signs and synchronicities that were flowing to me after that experience was insane. I was like, whoa, what's going on? Because I wasn't really, that's when I started to research more about spirituality. And then I found these near-death experience groups, which, that is what helped me realize, like when I even because my near-death experience, I was in darkness. So most people see a light and all these bright things. So you're just in total darkness. But I found other people who've had those experiences and they describe it the same way. And I'm like, so was something like, so it was, but
Oh,
to be aware of the darkness.
Yeah, I was in the darkness, but it was like a velvety love. And I was basically, I was inside the tunnel. The light did come. Jesus came as a light and God came as a light, but Jesus had his hair was coming across his face, which detected movement. And the light was coming forward and his hair was going toward the light. So that light was sucking us in. So you were inside, I believe you were inside the tunnel.
Right. And I wonder too, had I not kept coming back, I kept pulling back and waking up. And then I wonder, had I not, I mean, look, obviously I was meant to keep coming back and whatnot, but had I just let go, would I've gone further? Like I really do. I think I was in the beginning of the tunnel and I felt God's love. I didn't see anything or hear anything, but I felt love and peace. And even when I woke up, I knew I'd be okay. Like I kept saying that, guys, I'm okay. I'm okay. Why do you look so scared? You know, so, and I'm a feeler. Like it's interesting because my clairsentience is like, that's how I guide through my life. My feels, I do, you know, have visions and whatnot, but like, or see a lot of synchronicities, but, you know, I felt God's love. Like I may not have saw anything, I maybe didn't see, but I felt it. So, you know, I'm wondering if maybe that's why I'm a feeler. You know, I feel things before they happen because I tend to do that.
You come in with what you need, or you gather it along the way. Because I truly believe that certain moments of our life are planned, because that's what I got in my near-death experience. He said, understand these moments, they matter. And so those are the moments that you were supposed to understand, and it got you to where you are today. I think that's fabulous.
Right. It definitely it did. The memory came back. It took 20 years for the memory of me being in the vegetative state to come back. And then when it came back, I started to talk to my parents and ask my parents questions. And they were like, oh my gosh, I remember that. I was like accurate things. Like I finally got to tell them why I needed to come out of that MRI. And I said, it's because static was playing in the headphones, it was driving me nuts. And my mom was like, oh my gosh, she was like freaking out. Like 20 years later, they hear, I could never tell them. And then I never did, but it was just wild. I definitely think, you know, memories come back when they're meant to sometimes. Mm-hmm. And that memory had to come back to remind me like how lucky I am. Mm-hmm. Like, I can't imagine if I never came out of that. I mean, even the doctors, they didn't really beat around the bush. They kind of told my parents, she's better off if she died, because otherwise she's trapped in the States, you know? And I'm like, yeah. So it was very scary to be trapped in my body. Like cancer is scary. To be trapped in your body, fully aware, a lot scarier than cancer.
I think that happens to a lot of people at their death too, because I know my dad, I believe he was in there, but he couldn't move either until, of course, he whipped out of his body when he died. But yeah, I think this is a fantastic story. And then they gifted you your son, the love of your life.
My son, the amount of prayers, and it was like, he didn't just heal me, like he healed everybody who basically watched me die. You know, for my whole family to see and interact with this kid that, like, it's a miracle I'm alive, let alone him to even be here. Like it was such an amazing, like that. It was like so much happened so quick. It was like I was praying for healing, and like God healed me with my son. And like, that is my gift for not giving up. Mm-hmm. And when I was in that deep, dark depression, the soul of that man that I, did that autopsy on was like right there, like trying to remind me to learn from, cause I was in a deep depression. So it was like, keep going, be grateful for each day. And it was like these angels coming to protect me from falling too deep. before I like face planted into the darkness. But it was like a dark night of the soul. You know, it was, and which is interesting because I had a near-death experience, but I didn't know anything about it. I never thought twice about following my intuition or even what intuition was. I just always followed my own lead. And my dad used to always say that I always knew what to do for myself. It's like, because I always had that internal guidance, even if I didn't recognize it.
Yeah, well, they didn't have much knowledge about near-death experiences previous to maybe even at the time when you had yours. So we're hoping that these videos and with all the organizations now that this will help people understand what happened to them, and maybe life won't be so traumatic, and it'll open up a better future for them, wouldn't you think?
Absolutely. Even in my nursing career, like I'm a Reiki nurse, and I see Reiki help people so much. Like I usually use it on kids, and it works amazing on kids. But my goal is to get Reiki more into Western medicine, because it's just a great way to help relax people without sedation. And I also I would like it for, if people have near-death experiences, one of the first people that they see are medical staff. So if they come up and they wake up and start talking about seeing God or seeing this, or like, I think it's crucial to not tell them that they just hallucinated it. Like that's supposed to heal them. But if you talk them out of believing it, then you're not helping them, So, I think once near-death experiencers more come forward, and I think we're all kind of being asked to come forward at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of like pioneers in the industry. They are more accepting to that kind of thing in the medical field, because while my parents were on hospice, there was a massage therapist that came, and she used Reiki on them, and really helped my mom tremendously. So, and they were aware, what she was doing. So I think that's awesome.
Right. I think that we need a little more spirituality in there in Western medicine. It can't just be all about the body, especially when we aren't our body.
We're hearing more and more about that with doctors and everything. So I think that's great. And so I'm really grateful that you shared your spiritual journey with us today. And
thank you so much.
Yeah, stories like this that give hope and courage, especially courage to people that are going through hard times like you did with your chemotherapy, that miraculous things do happen.
Right. And I've been 25 years cancer free. Yeah. So, and I do, I teach my son a lot. I try to keep his mind open, teach him about spirituality, because, I'm 25 years out, pediatric cancer survivor. And if anything happens to me, he'll always know I'm there. Like, mommy's never leaving you. That's the strongest bond in the universe is, mother and child. So I just want him to know no matter what, I'm there. And so I do. I try to work with him with this type of stuff. And I think, there's a lot of kids who are very intuitive. Kids are usually very intuitive, but noticing more and more, the kids are way more advanced than, it's like a whole new breed of human. I really do. They're very spiritually advanced beings.
Well,
kids that are born now.
People that have these, then they won't shut them down as easily either. So I think eventually we'll get there. Get to a positive environment. But I really thank you for sharing your experience.
No problem. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. So is there any additional message you'd like to give the audience before we head out?
So my message to everybody is going to be, I'm going to reiterate what was said to me, or what was told to me, is that we are never alone. Even when you feel so alone, like nobody's there, nobody's in your corner, we all are guided and protected. And even when you're in your darkest moments and you feel like nobody is there, your spiritual team is there. So, don't ever feel alone, because none of us are ever alone. And, sometimes we do have to go through the dark to get to the light. And that's but you will always get to the light. So focus on the light at the end of the tunnel.
That's right.
You will
Perfect.
get
Perfect. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. So now for those viewers out there, I'll put Jennifer's social media links below in the description area. If you'd like to reach out to her, that'll make it easy for you. And my final message today is that I ask that you wake up each day with a sense of wonder on where you will be guided, what you will be shown, and who will be placed in your pathway for you to learn from, because life is the most magnificent, mystical adventure you'll ever have. Don't forget to subscribe and enjoy your evening. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.